Coming up, Boston stays hot on the road and the Mavs win without either of their all-star starters. This is Locked On Game to Game NBA.
Every game, every team, every angle. Locked On Game to Game, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Game to Game NBA, local experts going over the biggest stories on the hardwood. I'm your host, Jourdan Black. Thanks so much for making Locked On your first listen every single weekday. Giannis and the Bucks dominated the Trailblazers in Portland last night. Our Locked On Bucks host tells you more on what it was that got Milwaukee the big win.
The Bucks dismantle the Blazers and improve to 8-0 since Chris Middleton returned to the lineup. They are playing some terrific basketball. My name's Kane Pittman. I'm the host of the Locked On Bucks podcast. I think if you're looking for a big positive from this game, it's the fact that you only needed 23 minutes from Giannis. There was a little bit of foul trouble involved there. Now, let's keep in mind that in those 23 minutes, Giannis still had 24 points, 13 rebounds, and 8 assists. But it's the fact that the Bucks have options. Chris Middleton, again, productive off the bench with 13 points in just 21 minutes. Brook Lopez passes 15,000 points and has 27 on the night. You get 20 from Drew Holiday. And overall, the Bucks, now that they've been able to get healthy, are starting to stack up the wins. And for an offense that has struggled all season long, over the last 10 games now, they are a top 10 offense. Their defense remains elite, and they are starting to win these games. Up next, in LA, potentially a history-making night for LeBron. The Bucks looking to keep their winning ways going. Check out the Locked On Bucks podcast wherever you get your podcasts.
Another big night from Jayson Tatum got the Boston Celtics a road win in Detroit. Our Locked On hosts from both Boston and Detroit give us their takes on the final.
Boston Celtics built a big lead in Detroit, nearly gave it away, but Jayson Tatum closed the door. I'm John Corrales of the Locked On Celtics podcast, and the Celtics had a weird starting lineup with Jaylen Brown as a late scratch. Sam Hauser stepped into the starting lineup, and it immediately paid dividends, broke out of his slump, and shot 5 of 6 in the first half to help the Celtics hold off a very cold shooting Detroit Pistons team. And then in the third quarter, it was about Jayson Tatum. Tatum did whatever he wanted after a tough first half. He came in the third and just hit 3-pointers, got to the rim, got to the line, really showed MVP caliber type of stuff there. He came off the floor, and that's when the Celtics gave away the lead in the fourth. He came back on, and Robert Williams is the underrated guy in this game because his putbacks, his ability to grab offensive rebounds, his presence around the rim was a key for the Boston Celtics. He, after Tatum checked in, scored 7 straight points, finishes the game with 15 points and 15 rebounds. He's the unsung hero in this game. Celtics get the win. Now they get ready for a big matchup against the Philadelphia 76ers at home.
The Detroit Pistons come back against the Boston Celtics, fall short. Host of the Lockdown Pistons podcast, Kook Hill here. The Pistons lose this game to the Boston Celtics 111-99. They tried to make it a close game in the fourth quarter, eventually cutting it down to 7, led by some strong play from Killian Hayes, but eventually Boston was just too much for him. Jayson Tatum really woke up in the second half, exploded for 34 points. But in this game, you can still find some positives to take away. Jalen Duren had 14 rebounds going up against Robert Williams, a really good comparison for him. Jaden Ivey, another game at point guard, only had 1 turnover. Struggled a little bit from the field, but only 1 turnover against this Boston Celtics defense. And Killian Hayes finally had a good game off the bench. He's been coming off the bench for the last 5 games. Looked like he got adjusted in this game. Off the bench, had 17 points and 9 rebounds, and his partner off the bench in Saddiq Bey also had 14 points, 6 rebounds, and 4 assists. So there were some bright spots in this game, but the Pistons could have hit a 3. Jayson Tatum could, and they lost.
Washington couldn't hold home court against Cleveland and fell to the Cavs Monday. Locked On Wizards tells us more on what held his team back in that defeat.
What's up, everybody? It's your boy Brandon Scott from Locked On Wizards. The Washington Wizards dropped their 3rd game in a row tonight, losing 114-91 to the Cleveland Cavaliers. But how did the Washington Wizards lose? Simple. 3 factors. Defense. They had no defense. Transition defense was abysmal. Defense in the paint. They gave up 58 points in the paint. They out-rebounded 43-37. So rebounding was an issue. 3-point shooting was an issue. And also, they shot 21% from the 3-point arc tonight. Also leading to the loss was Garland, Mitchell, and Allen. Darius Garland, 23 points. Donovan Mitchell, 21. And Allen, 23 points. So this was a big victory for the Cleveland Cavaliers. And again, this was his third straight loss for the Washington Wizards. So looking forward, they have the Charlotte Hornets Wednesday night to try to get back in the win column. Appreciate everybody tonight and have a good night.
Coming up, the Nets get a huge scoring night from a surprising source, but still can't secure the win. This is Locked On Game to Game NBA. Super Bowl Sunday is just a few days away, and the only sports app you need, FanDuel. We're so excited about our new sports betting partner for Locked On because they're the #1 sports book in America. And if you're new to FanDuel, that's even better. They have so many great features that make betting on sports fun and easy. New customers join today to get started with $150 in free bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. So just sign up at FanDuel.com/lockedon and get that first bet started. Welcome back to Locked On Game to Game NBA. I'm your host, Jourdan Black. Thanks again for making Locked On your first listen every single day. With Kyrie Irving gone, Cam Thomas stepped up for the Brooklyn Nets and scored 47 points, but it still wasn't enough to get him the win over the Clippers. LA stole a victory in Brooklyn, and our Locked On Nets host tells us how Brooklyn let that big night go to waste.
Doug Norrie, Locked On Nets, coming at you in the first official game post Kyrie Irving in Brooklyn Nets land. That is how they're starting to roll these days, with Kyrie Irving having been shipped off to the Dallas Mavericks. And it was all the young guards all the time, even in a loss 124-116 to the Clippers. Cam Thomas, for the second game in a row, goes absolutely off. 47 points, becomes just the second youngest person ever in the NBA to score back-to-back 40-point games. Only LeBron James in his way on that one. Evan Sumner puts in 23. They ultimately lose the game, but it's hard to fault the effort. Brooklyn brought it with everything they had against Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, and the rest of the Clippers. Ultimately, they were not able to take home the win, but it was a form of Brooklyn Nets basketball that was full of energy. And in that way, it's encouraging on its own. We're going to be talking about that and so much more over on the Locked On Nets podcast.
The Chicago Bulls made beating the San Antonio Spurs look easy Monday night with a huge fourth quarter that put San Antonio out of contention for good. Locked On Bulls has more on how Chicago won its third in a row.
Chicago Bulls get the dub over the San Antonio Spurs, 128-104. I'm Pat the Designer from Locked On Bulls, and the Bulls were led by their big men in this one as they got a dominating win. Andre Drummond put up 21 and 15 rebounds. Also, Nikola Vucevic, 22 and 12 today, leading the way for the Bulls on the first half of their back-to-back. They got Memphis tomorrow, and so you really saw them playing a little bit more sparingly. DeMar DeRozan, Zach LaVine not taking nearly as many shots in this one. Patrick Williams being very aggressive, did some good things for the Bulls in this game. Love how him and Ayo Dosunmu, the young guys, stepped up as well, both offensively and defensively for this team. Bulls put on a real show as they got the win in this. Spurs tried to fight back a little bit in the middle, but weren't able to get the job done. At the end of the day, good to see the Bulls get this win. Let's hope they can get another one in Memphis tomorrow. We'll talk about all that and more over on Locked On Bulls.
While still waiting on Kyrie Irving to arrive and Luka Doncic out of the lineup, the Dallas Mavericks still managed to beat the Utah Jazz on the road Monday with the rest of the roster. Josh Green and Jaden Hardy led the way with 29 points apiece for Dallas. Our Locked On hosts from both teams tell you how the Mavs still managed to get into the win column.
The Dallas Mavericks, shorthanded, get a big win in Utah. Nick Angstead from the Locked On Mavericks podcast here. In the Dallas Mavericks, without Luka Doncic, Kyrie Irving's not ready to play yet. Dinwiddie's gone in the trade. Dorian Finney-Smith is gone in the trade. Injuries still get massive output from Josh Green scoring 29 points with 6 boards, and Jaden Hardy, 29 points off the bench himself. Incredible output from the young guys. And this comes in a day when Kyrie Irving arrives in Dallas to do his physical, to get ready to play potentially on Wednesday. Mark Cuban was asked, who benefits the most from Kyrie Irving coming in, but also 2 guys going out in Dinwiddie and Dorian Finney-Smith? That opens up a rotation spot. Mark Cuban said Josh Green. This is a great day for somebody to say that Josh Green benefits from something, because he was excellent in this game. 10 of 17 from the field, 3 of 6 from 3, hit all 6 of his threes. He was so great. And Jaden Hardy, he stepped up too. Incredible night for the Mavs young guys.
The cliche is it's a trap game. The fact is the Jazz just got badly outplayed by the Dallas Mavericks, who did not have Luka Doncic and did not have Kyrie Irving tonight. David Locke of Locked On Jazz. It was a 124-111 win for the Mavericks. The Jazz led by 12 at the end of 137-25, but then the Jazz stopped making threes. The Jazz went 6 of 31 from 3 in the game after going 3 of 7 in the first, so they went 3 of their final 24. But Dallas deserves credit for this. Their active defensive players were up in on the Jazz. They were not good three-point looks, and the Jazz really never were able to get any type of offensive rhythm. Dallas ran by the Jazz in transition, a much faster team, 27-4. They won the fast break points. Second chance points on rebounds, 24-12, as Dallas had 17 offensive rebounds, and the Jazz lose their second straight in this extended homestand.
That's going to do it for this edition of Locked On Game to Game. Thank you so much for making Locked On your first listen every single weekday. Make sure you subscribe to Locked On NBA and your team's Locked On podcast on YouTube and wherever else you get your podcasts. I'm Jourdan Black, and this has been Locked On Game to Game.